Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday night podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show.
Good evening, everybody. Hello. Welcome to another Tuesday night. Todd has off tonight, so we are bringing you a very special guest. We have Ron Trzcinski. He's one of our Sachs Realty real estate agents. Ron, welcome.
Well, thank you. And yes, indeed, when we heard earlier that Todd was going to be taking the day off, we thought, what?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I'm proud to sit in for Todd. I've recently affiliated with him. We have a lot of in common with our views on things. I've been in the business for about 25 years, so hopefully I can give you some insights as to what we think is happening in the market, some good strategies for looking at the coming year, and whatever questions you might have.
Well, Ron, we're super grateful and happy to have you step in. Ron has 25 years of expertise in the real estate industry. So we're going to pull on him, and we would love to have you ask him some questions. We have a lot of buyers that are reaching out to us that really don't know. They need help navigating this incredibly difficult market. In the past, 2+ years, they have seen everything from buying over value to waiving home inspections, appraisals, appraisal gap contingencies. They've been very, very frustrated. So now we're seeing a different kind of buyer. And Ron, why don't you start a little bit on what you're seeing personally with your clients right now?
Well, what I am saying, if I have a listing, what I'm seeing is the buyers are not afraid to come in asking for contingencies that a year ago they wouldn't be asking for. Probably was ill-advised when they weren't asking for them, such as home inspections. Mm-hmm. But now, not only are they asking for home inspections, it's a regular home inspection, a structural and mechanical inspection, but they'll throw in there, we're going to do a radon inspection, we're going to do a mold inspection. They're not just going to inspect the plumbing, they're going to get a scope and go down the main sewer line and look at that with a camera and see if there's any problems in there. So, and the sellers are seeing less offers. Instead of the multiple offers that used to be out there, there's fewer offers. So if they want to sell their house, they really have to work with these people. Mm-hmm. And what's furthermore is when they accept this, whereas previously maybe they were accepting a deal with a home inspection, but they were saying, okay, but it's sold as is. We're not going to fix anything.
Right.
Now, with the buyer will come back to the seller and say, okay, we found some things, and they're not afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Here's a list of things we would like to have done. Now, in some cases, the seller just can't afford to do it. But usually they're trying to work out a way where they can satisfy those conditions. Otherwise, they're going to be putting their house right back on the market, to a market that's a lot slower than it was. Homes are staying on the market much longer than they were before.
Yeah.
So that's starting to make inventory increase, but very slightly, because we still don't have a lot of people putting their homes out there on the market.
So let's talk about, with you being in the industry for 25 years roughly, basically that means that you have seen downturns in the past. So how would you advise, and how do you advise your clients to be able to navigate through something, as we can see how quickly things are changing here? And what would you advise them to do as far as on the purchase side? What would you tell your buyers right now?
Well, first off, we don't want them to overpay.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want them to do that when the market was extremely hot, but many buyers were finding that if they didn't pay a little bit more, they were not getting the deal. And it depends on how long you're going to be in the house. If you were just buying a house for a year, maybe it didn't make sense to recoup the cost that were involved in it. But if you're going to stay in a house for at least 5 years, no matter what the market is like, you're probably recouping any cost to go into it. But now, the way I'm advising people is definitely for the most part, there is not a need to overpay. And if people are overpaying for it because they still think we're in the kind of market we were before and you lose out on a deal, that's okay. They overpaid for that house and it's going to take a while before they recoup that money.
So when you have a situation where you have someone who's renting and their lease renewal is coming up, let's say very beginning of next year, whether that be in February or March, how are you advising them right now?
If it's at all possible to go month to month, I would hope that they can do that. That way they have the best of both worlds. They can still rent for a while, but they're still in a position to buy. They're in a very good position when they do it that way. If they have to renew for a year, they're probably going to be stuck with that lease for a year because they can't buy a house, have the house appreciate to recoup the cost. And odds are they can't afford both a rent and a mortgage at the same time.
Right, exactly. Now, you deal with a lot of investors. You
Yes.
have a lot of investor clients. And then what about investment properties? What are you advising them right now as far as purchasing?
They definitely have to be conservative. And I think they're recognizing that the values that we saw before are not there. In fact, and I guess appraisers are doing this also, whereas if the market stays like it is now, then appraisers will eventually go back to looking at 6 months worth of data. But the market was changing so quickly before that you would go back maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true now. We can't go back 6 months in time and look at what houses sold for because they were selling too high compared to today's market.
Yep.
So the appraisers the investors have to be aware of that. Don't look at what they were selling for. Let's look at the new market that's out here. And what's furthermore, assume it might go down a little bit more. So you can consider if you're going to look at something like purchase, renovate and hold for a while, then you're okay. The rental values are still there. And the rental market typically lags the sales market because the rentals are in there. If somebody signs up for a lease, they're signed up for a 1 to 2 year lease.
Right.
So when you see somebody's paying $1,500, okay, they're paying that for, that longer period of time. Whereas the sales price of homes, that happens more instantaneously.
We do have a couple of other questions. We've got Travis. Hello, Travis. Real estate mindset. Does Ron have a Sachs Realty jacket? Of course he does. 100%. He just did not wear it tonight, but he does.
They caught me off guard. I didn't know I was going to be doing this until I came in today.
Yes. So we've got Charlton Zimmerman. What is the process for pre-approval for VA and FHA? Are you familiar with the lender process on how that works as far as getting the pre-approval?
Well, they do have to have a certificate of eligibility for the VA.
Yep.
So that's one of the things that they need. Of course, you should be a veteran.
Yes.
You can be active, and otherwise, you're looking at talking to a lender. That's pretty much most lenders are going to do VA loans. So that's where you really should start.
Yeah. Yep. And Charlton, thank you so much for your question. I hope that gave you a good foundation for the answer for you. Let's talk about, let's go back, as we were discussing how the market had turned back previously, 2008, let's say that I know that you were a broker at one period of time. How were people buying then compared to how they were buying now, considering that was the last downturn?
You mean like 2008?
Yes.
Around then? Yep. There was a difference that led up to the 2008 recession, and that was the type of financing that was available. Lenders were very creative with how they were financing. They were somewhat pressured by the government to make loans available to as many people as possible. But anyway, they became creative in trying to do that. So They may have an interest-only loan. They may have a loan that was amortized over 30 years. Over 40 years instead of over 30 years.
Mhm.
There may be a balloon payment at 30 years. Nobody cared about that. It was so far out in the future. But anything that could be done to make the payments lower, they were doing. After that recession, the government did look closely at that and said, well, one big change that happened is you now have to qualify for what your payment may eventually adjust to. So if it eventually is going to adjust to include principal and interest, if it is going to adjust from a lower rate that if you bought it, if you had an ARM and it was going to go from, 4% up to 6%, you had to be approved at 6%, not just 4%. That way, when all those things took place and the loan adjusted to the higher amount, then you'd be less likely to see the foreclosures, which in fact, at least in the Baltimore market, I was looking at trying to look at see what kind of HUD houses were out there. The HUD houses are basically the houses that are foreclosures from FHA. I could find hardly any houses that were FHA or HUD owned homes. I work with some companies that give me leads for foreclosed properties. I'm in touch with them on a regular basis, and there's nothing happening. So
to be clear, Ron, I don't want to interrupt you there. That is the Baltimore market. So that is
right. That's the Baltimore
what's
market.
Ron seeing here locally.
Yeah. Now, of course, real estate, as we all like to say, real estate is local. But those conditions that took place were done by the federal government, not Maryland government. So a lot of that, has caused less foreclosures, should have caused less foreclosures in some other areas also. Now, maybe some areas see more foreclosures than others, but in general, there should be less across the country. Definitely are less in the Maryland area.
We've got another question here. Ron, will you talk about when you think the Fed will pivot and what effect long-term and short that it will have on the housing market?
Well, I don't want to play an economist.
Yes.
I think a good thing to look at when you look at this show is that we are experts in real estate. We're not necessarily experts in the economy, but I think the Fed they're going to go after the goal that they stated, which is we want to slow inflation. They've been doing that. They've been having some impact on that. I don't think they're quite there. So I think the Fed will continue in that direction. And just by the way, the Fed that's the main tool we look at is where they put those interest rates. Another tool that they have, which isn't talked about quite as much, is that they have money that they can purchase things. The main thing as affects real estate would be mortgage-backed securities. Up until about 2018, they had a policy of really buying lots of mortgage-backed securities that artificially brought the interest rates down. They decided to change that policy. There was a temporary blip in that when the pandemic occurred. But for the most part, you see a lot less investment from the Fed in the mortgage-backed security industry, which, of course, that also makes the interest rates go up. So hopefully that gives a little bit of insight. I know I avoided the question a little bit, but
that's fine. That's totally fine. Let's talk about, if you're a buyer out there, what are some important questions that you should be asking your agent right now?
Well, I'll start with one question that the agent should be asking the buyer is, are you approved?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, let's get you in touch with a lender.
Yeah.
Since interest rates have gone up, you want to try and get the best terms you possibly can. And one of the advantages of going to a lender up front is many lenders, but if they've been doing it for a while, they look at credit reports every time they look to approve somebody. So they just just like I look at houses every day, lenders look at credit reports every day. So they know what can hurt somebody's credit and what can help somebody's credit. But beyond that, many lenders have programs which are directly synchronized with the algorithms of the credit reporting bureaus. So these programs can suggest to a person, if you do this to your credit, pay down a particular debt, this is how it will impact your credit score. And the higher you can get your credit score, the better your interest rate can be. So that's a starting point for what buyers should be looking at is, are you approved? And how can you get approved to better terms?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. But to go back to the question, and that was correct. That's what the agent should be asking the buyer. But what is something that's really, what that client should be asking their agent in order to be guided the correct way and knowing that they're going to be in the good hands?
Well, I don't want to speak positively or negatively about some other agents. I can speak for how I work with my clients. I figure that the buyers are out there when they're looking to purchase a home. To a large extent, it's an emotional purchase.
Mm-hmm.
Can I see myself in this neighborhood, in this house? Will it meet my needs? Is it big enough? Does it have enough bedrooms, enough bathrooms? Whatever it is that will make them have a comfortable lifestyle. Whereas my role is, one, to make sure that I can find something that does meet those things, but I'm looking at the house from a standpoint of, is it a good house? Let's look at the structure of the house. Let's look at the systems in the house. Many people, as soon as we get to the house, what will happen, they might be slow people, but they do a record-breaking 50-yard dash to the front door. Oh, wait a minute. Are you buying only the inside, or are you buying the outside too? Let's take a look at the entire house.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they don't, that's my role. I slow down and I look at the roof. I look at the foundation. We get in the house. I'm opening and closing a door because I want to see if there's settlement in the house. I open and close a window, not just to see if the window works, but to see if it's opening and closing tightly. It could be a sign that there's settlement.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that I want to see. I can pass that on. Usually, once people go to a few houses with me, they'll say, "Okay, let's get the Ron report."
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that's good. And then we've got a question here from JJA. Thank you for your question. Cookie cutter new builds, horror stories where foundations are crumbling. What's the red flag? So talk about that. What when you go into a new build, what are some red flags that you could potentially pick out and notice?
On a new build?
Yeah.
Well, on new builds, and some builders even recognize this. Well, first off, it'd be good if you're getting a new home, if you can get it before it's completely put up. That way you can go to the site as it's being constructed, and you can see what they're doing as they go along. But not only that, just beyond yourself, if you hire an inspector to go and look at it as it goes through the various phases, then that inspector will look at the foundation as it goes up. He'll look at it as they put up the studding, and then as they put up the drywall, as they put in the electrical systems and the plumbing systems. I've seen houses that, as they've gone up, where they had floods in the basement, even in houses where they were finishing the basement, because they really weren't following the right procedure for putting up the house. Now in some houses, I mean, you can go in just like in any other house. If it's already built, maybe the foundation has a crack in it. And that's not necessarily, well, of course, it's not a good thing, not necessarily a problem if the builder knows how to properly address that type of a problem. And that's what you want to know is, are they going to address it? How are they going to address it? So there's some similarities to looking at existing houses as there are to looking at new homes.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good answer. How about you, Moto, motorized bicycles. I see a lot of housing developments and apartments currently happening in Arizona. Do you think with a future increase in inventory coming online soon, rent rates and home values will go down?
With more homes coming on the market, will price of homes go down, and will
Yep, it's saying
rental rates go down?
so they're saying that they're seeing a lot of housing developments and apartments currently happening in Arizona. Now, this is going to be area specific. But do you think with the future increase in inventory coming online soon that their rent rates and home values will go down?
Yeah, regardless of where it is, it all goes back to supply and demand. The more supply there is, all other things being equal, the price will come down. The less supply you have, prices go up, which is part of the reason that we saw prices going up, last year and for a couple of years, for a couple of year period, is because there was an extremely low inventory, so prices went up. So yes, just the opposite of that will happen as the inventory increases. Prices will come down.
Yeah. Yeah. How about this one, Allie Burant? Thank you so much for your question. Should we consider building a new home and wait for incentives, or forego building and buy a used home? What are you recommending your clients who are in this situation?
Well, it's all going to boil down to what they want and what the cost of it is.
How about if they don't know, though? How about if they're like, we're considering, and we got the new home over here, the option here, or should we just forgo that entirely and go ahead and buy a used home, quote unquote?
Yeah, if the purpose is to buy a used home and to bring it up to new standards, or to maybe increase the size of an older home a little bit, you'd want to keep in mind that the cost of materials is increasing. Of course, that's going to apply to new homes also. So it might not be as cost beneficial as you would at first think, because the materials cost is going up, and interest rates not only for more purchase mortgages are going up. Interest rates for refinances, interest rates for anything are going up. So if you're looking to finance those things, the price is going up either way. When you're looking at a new home builder, and this is of course also specific to the location where you are, the builders are for the most part are not raising prices because the market's not allowing that right now. And what you maybe can get a builder to do, because instead of lowering a price, what they'd rather do, and this is the case usually in any kind of market with a builder, they'd rather say put a finished basement in the house instead of lowering the price by $20,000. So it's good to look at both and see what kind of deals you can get.
No, I think that's great. Thank you, Ron. We've got Danuska. Danuska, thank you so much. She is a longtime viewer, and contributor to all of our questions. So thank you so much. Ron and Melissa, good evening. How accurate is the appraisal number that we get when buying property? How do you feel about answering that one?
Yeah, it's amazing how appraisals frequently come very close to the contract price. I had a house I had a client. I was showing some houses to the client, and I pulled, and an appraiser won't pull up this many houses, but I said, here's 15 houses that reasonably could be used as comparisons to this house. And I'll just, for the sake of discussion, I'll say the price on the house was $300. If we looked at the high end of the prices we looked at of the 15 that I pulled up, we could have justified a price of probably $310. if I looked at the lower priced homes, we maybe would have justified a price of 290. So if somebody came in, at a lower price, say 290, it's a good chance the appraiser would look at the houses that allowed him or her to appraise it at 290. On the other hand, if they went up to 310, there would be houses available to say that appraisal was good also. They would probably use those other houses. So that said, there still is going to be, it's going to be relatively close. And if you get two different because where the real test comes in is if you have a house that's not under contract, and you maybe don't know where to price it. So you call an appraiser in. Maybe it's an estate sale. So you call an appraiser in, and the appraiser doesn't have that contract to go against. Now they have to, on their own, decide where is it more likely to sell. So with all that said, I'd say that their numbers are going to be relatively close. Keep in mind, and appraisers say this right on an appraisal, it's an opinion of value. So an opinion is going to vary, even though they have lots of training and have done lots of appraisals. It still is an opinion of value.
We have this one right here. Another one from you, Moto. How will BlackRock's troubles and similar companies affect the housing market in 2023?
I don't know exactly what's going on with BlackRock.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you know, Melissa?
Well, no, I mean, I just know with them, buying up all the properties with, being in Wall Street and buying and purchasing up all those properties. But as far as what's going on right now, no, I don't have the knowledge on that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in 2023. You guys are more than welcome to comment and kind of keep us up to speed on what's going on with that.
Sorry we couldn't give you a good answer on that one.
Yep. Let's go ahead, Ron, and talk more about what do you think most buyers have learned over the past 2 years when purchasing?
Hopefully they learned that you shouldn't pay too much.
Yeah.
But what I started to think when the market was going crazy and people would pay over the appraised value, it was like the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. If you had the money, you were able to buy the real estate. If you didn't have the money, you couldn't buy it, or you had to settle for something less, which might be a lesson to consider. If you can't afford the higher priced house because you keep getting outbid the way the market was, maybe that's not the market you should be in.
Yeah. And then let's not forget them foregoing the inspections.
Right. When you people that let the inspections go by, even if you go in the house with somebody who has a very good idea of home construction and home systems, they can't see everything just by doing a walkthrough. I can look at a house and tell people a lot about it, but generally speaking, I'm not pulling the electric panel off of the circuit breaker box. I'm not pulling the cover off of a furnace. I might do it if it's a vacant house and bank owned, but typically you're not going to see me doing those kinds of things. So you're not going to know what's back there until you have an inspector come in and look at those things. So you buy the house thinking, oh, it looks good.
Yeah.
And then you get in there and you find all these problems.
You're also not a licensed home inspector, and you're not claiming to be. You're going in there with your years of experience, putting your eyes on it and, with what you know, but by no means, I mean, you would be encouraging.
Yeah. And even if an inspector went in who has that kind of knowledge, when they're just looking at a house, they're not pulling the covers off of things either. You're really not supposed to.
Right. Yep, exactly. Let's take some more questions here. And going back to Charlton's question, I know, Travis, you said that you could chime in on the FHA and VA. Feel free to comment that for some information on the lending side that we were not able to supply to Charlton, and maybe he can get additional feedback and some input on the answer to that question would be great. And how about
One of the things that they will tell you with like FHA used to be, you could go as low as 580 for a credit score. I think the low end is closer to 620 now. But if your score is that low and somebody's giving you a loan, they're also probably giving you a much higher interest rate. So again, it goes back to, if you can find ways to improve your credit, that's probably a good starting point. Instead of just getting a loan because you can get a loan.
Yeah. We've got another question from Travis here. Are you seeing many buying incentives from new home builders in your area? If so, anything interesting or creative? Are you seeing anything?
I haven't seen it at the moment, but I guess what would happen is if a builder has already constructed the homes, and now they've seen the slowdown in the market, then they may look at being creative. There are other builders who haven't even put the homes up yet. So they're basically saying, I'm waiting until a qualified buyer comes along before I even break ground. So,
Yeah.
but no, myself, I have not seen the incentives from the builders. Have you seen anything out there?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen any incentives. I mean, I just know there are incentives out there specifically. I'm not sure, but they are lowering prices. I mean, they are having many deep price cuts, especially in different parts of our country, where they're, going down 40, 50,000. And you guys can chime in on that if that's what you're seeing in your neck of the woods. But I do know that the new construction, they're feeling the pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, and since we all know that the market has changed course, so it's more of a buyer's market now, you can go to any buyer, whether they be a new home builder or in the resale market, and you can try your luck and say, okay, you're asking $600,000 for this new home. Will you take $550,000? Will you give me enough the money for the closing help? Will you put a new basement in? They're either going to say yes or no.
Yeah.
And odds are they're going to try and come up with something to work with you, because their homes aren't moving.
Yeah.
Or at least not as fast as they'd like them to.
Going back and talking about credit score, is income more important than credit score when buying and refinancing?
They're both important. I don't know if one's more important than the other. I mean, income they look at debt to income ratios. So, I mean, your income is going to, along with your debt, is going to allow you to get a mortgage of a certain amount. The thing that can then help you to increase that amount is if you have a better credit score.
Yeah. Yeah. How about this one? Yumoto, you've got some really good questions tonight. In regards to a second investment rental property, do you think it is cheaper to build a new house if you own the land outright rather than buy a second income property house?
I think that's going to depend, but my guess would be no. The cost of materials are still fairly high. So my first attempt would be to look at existing homes.
Awesome. Thank you for the question. We've got Ricky L here. Our builders in New Orleans area are stubborn. A couple new construction homes just sold right under asking. Think that will create problems with comps?
If these were new homes, one of the things you might want to look at a little more closely with the homes that they sold is, if they were very close to the asking price, were there any other incentives that the builder provided? Like if a builder puts up 100 new homes, and and the first home that they sell, they discount significantly. That's set up the rest of the development for lower prices. But if that first home, they, instead of lowering the price significantly, they said, we'll put in another full bath or finish off well, I don't know how many basements they have in New Orleans, but if it has a basement, if they finish off the basement or add a garage to the house, if they do something that doesn't immediately show that they dropped the price, but actually gave the buyer more value, then it's not necessarily hurting the values.
Mm-hmm. We got, let's see here. What else, Ron, do you think is super important that we haven't talked about yet that comes to mind given the current climate of the market?
Well, we didn't talk too much about we talked about appraisals, but if you are overpaying for a house and it does not, or you're going above the asking price, or even at the asking price, if the sellers are still thinking that it's last year, is it going to appraise? Because the appraisers are not looking at what happened last year. They're not even looking at what happened 6 months ago. They're going back a lesser period of time. So does it kill your deal if you paid the wrong price for something? So you want to work closely with your real estate agent to help determine what a reasonable value for the house is. And if you choose to pay more, well, you'd have to understand the potential consequences. It might not appraise. If it doesn't appraise, the seller might say, okay, I'm not moving forward with the deal. The seller might say, okay, I agree to lower the price to the appraised amount.
Are you seeing anyone, I did not mean to interrupt you right there. Are you seeing any circumstances where anyone is paying over appraised value right now?
I've seen where they're paying more than I think the houses are worth, more than I've advised my buyers in some cases. And I haven't seen the results of those appraisals, but I'm thinking that they did not appraise. But in a lot of cases, if it's an investor if an investor is buying a home to renovate, they're paying cash. They're not getting it appraised typically. But if, let's say, it's a rental property, and it already has the renters in there, you want to have the cash flow that makes it worthwhile. That, all that said, doesn't mean it necessarily will appraise.
Right.
The appraiser, of course, is looking at the value of the property, but they're also looking at there's the income approach to appraising. So they will look at that. I pretty much have seen, and I haven't seen it drop much. The prices, well, in the Baltimore market, a house that might be worth $300, if you looked at it from a reasonable cash flow standpoint, a reasonable return on investment, if you looked at the rent you could get, they were like $50,000 overpriced, and people were buying them.
Yeah.
But they were starting to appraise based on the value of the property more so than the value of the income and the return on investment. I had some investors who just said, I can't justify buying it. I'm not getting the cash flow. And personally, I can't see why some other investors actually bought the houses at some of the higher prices. It wasn't there. Maybe they thought that the rents would eventually catch up. I don't know.
How about this one? What is worse to pay, high property tax or PMI?
Well, high property tax is going to stay there forever. So, whereas the PMI, you can get rid of that. So, if I can avoid PMI, I'd like to do it. But the taxes, sorry, you got to pay them.
We've got this one from Umoto. How much cash do you think is waiting on the sidelines to buy property? So much cheap money was available before the rate increases. Will this be a factor to prevent future declines property values? Future decline property values.
How much money is on the sidelines, as in cash in people's pockets, I would assume is what we mean. I think there's quite a bit of it out there. And investors are kind of vacillating between letting go of that money to stay in the ball game or saying, no, I'm afraid the market might still come down. So I think the money is there. It's, the investors just have to find the right deals.
Oops. How about this one right here? We've got Julie question. Looking for a smart lot in downsizing. Excuse me. Will custom home builders be open to building my dream home under 2,000 square feet? All I see in their portfolios are massive luxury homes.
I would think in today's market that they'd be open to building whatever they can build, where they're going to make some money. And in fact, there are some builders who, instead of putting up the homes where they have the lots, instead of building the homes, they're saying in the meantime, they're getting into the investment business. They're renovating homes. It keeps their core workers busy. It keeps them making some money. And they're not risking putting up a new home that might just sit on the market. So if somebody comes to them and says, I want to build a house, I would think the answer would be, it might not be yes from your real big builders, but I think you're going to find some smaller builders who would definitely say yes to that.
How about this one dealing with the investor market? Do you always upgrade a rental property every time a tenant moved out?
Well, I don't know if it's an upgrade as much as you might have to just bring it back up to speed. And it depends. I've been looking at some places lately where the rents are a bit low. They have tenants in them. And in order to get higher rents, if the tenants left, we actually would have to upgrade the properties. So in the case of those properties where they are a little bit outdated, yes, if you want to get more rent, you're going to have to upgrade them. But in many cases, when a tenant leaves, you're at least going back in and cleaning the carpet or putting new flooring down and painting the place and giving it a very good cleaning, which is not the same as upgrading.
Now, when you're talking about upgrading, are you talking about like
maybe a new
granite countertops, or is that excessive?
Yeah, or it may depend on what market you're in.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some rental markets where that's not going to give you anything because nobody's going to care. Or some renters aren't as careful with taking care of rental property as in other areas. So you don't want to put high-end things into the house. But in some markets, people treat it just like it's their own home. They do care about the house. They do care where they live. They care what it looks like when people come to visit.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see something that looks a little nicer, and they will pay a little bit more in the rent.
We've got a good one here from Jeff M. Jeff M., thank you so much for your question. Always awesome to hear from you every week. At what point are people forced to sell because of property taxes? If we continue on this trajectory of prices, eventually the majority of people will be taxed out of their homes. Thoughts on that?
Well, in Maryland, there is a limit to how quickly they can raise your taxes. Now, if somebody sells a house where the taxes were based on the house being worth $200,000 and then it sells at 400, the new buyer should be aware that it's going to start being assessed at that high. it's going to soon be reassessed at a much higher value. But if a homeowner is in the house, it's not going to suddenly go up because the values went up. What is it? They got to keep it like under 4% per year or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. So, and I don't know what it is in all the different states, but Maryland at least tries to protect the homeowner from the taxes going up too quickly.
Yeah.
But it certainly is a legitimate concern. I mean, eventually it's going to catch up to people.
Yep. Exactly. I do know, there are states that do have higher property taxes for sure. And I think that that's actually why a lot of people left certain states, even during COVID. How about, let's do this one. Let's talk about rates here really quick. Do you see the interest rate coming back down under 5% in 2023 for buying homes?
Well, again, we're getting into the realm of economist.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned the Fed had artificially kept rates down for a while by purchasing the mortgage-backed securities. If the economy doesn't do well, whereby people can expect to get good returns on stock market investments, they do tend to go to the more safe investments, the more steady return investments of bonds, including mortgage-backed securities. And the more people who would invest in mortgages, mortgage-backed securities, the more money becomes available. And it's a supply and demand thing. The more money that's available, the lower the interest rates will go. But personally, I don't see that drastic of a change in the stock market such that people are going to suddenly flood their money into mortgage-backed securities. At the same time, the government does think that it has a role to look out for the people, which is nice of them. So if mortgage rates start to really get out of hand, I could see them saying that if the market's not bringing those rates down, we need to step in and artificially bring those rates back down. I could see that happening, but I don't know that we'll see going down to 5% in next year.
Yeah, I think people want to see it at 5%.
Yeah, we'd love to see it.
Don't think that's really happening.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, next year is still going to be a time of the market adjusting. And I don't see anybody making any efforts to say, oh, mortgage rates are too high, let's do something to change them. They're going to let the market settle out before they start messing with that again.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And Yumoto, I'm going to touch on this, but we really stay far away from the political scene. Do you think current political climate of the United States is not favorable for real estate investors in the coming decade, especially with the looming recession? I think, yes, we are going to be having a campaigning year coming up.
Well, instead of talking about the politics, what we can say is, and I don't know how, I know in the Maryland area, there's some opportunity zones where you get some tax breaks. These were set up by the government, whichever government it was. They haven't disappeared. Well, and I think they've expanded some of the areas for this. There are for some areas where either the property itself is considered historic, or the area is considered an historic district, there are incentives to purchase those properties. These are things that are set up by the government. So regardless of what administration has been in there, those things have seemed to stay in place.
Yep. We've got Scott Walters here. Scott, such a fan. Thank you so much for your question. What is the percentage of likelihood the biggest bubble in world history won't eventually crash? Ron, your thoughts on that?
one of the things that's keeping prices from rapidly coming down. I mean, it depends where you are. I guess you could say it's rapidly coming down. There might be some builders here or there around the country who are making some substantial cuts, but because we don't have as many foreclosures and short sales, like we did back in 2008, which may have been the biggest bubble at that time. And those foreclosures and short sales made the market substantially start to come down. The market's not quite the same, and individual homeowners don't have the same incentives. A bank is not in the business of owning homes; they're in the business of lending money. So when they do get a home in foreclosure, they don't want it. So they also, it's typically has some kind of mortgage insurance. So they're going to get their money one way or another, but they want to unload that thing. A homeowner says, I think the value is at a certain amount and I'm not willing to go much lower than that. So I think the market will eventually catch up to where it may drop a little bit, but I don't see it drastically coming down. The same conditions are not there that have been there in previous adjustments of prices. I might be wrong, but we'll find out.
We will find out. Will there be a big rush to buy once interest rates and prices come down? Thank you, Jared, for the question. Or do you think we will see both at the same time?
I hope people come rushing out to buy. That would be nice. If interest rates are lower, one of the things I mentioned in regards to interest rates is where people invest their money. If the stock market is not performing well, people change to the investment of investing in bonds. The problem is the economy is not doing as well. So they see these great interest rates and they say, oh, great interest rates, but I'm afraid I might lose my job because the economy is not as good. So the interest rates get better. It doesn't necessarily mean people are in a position otherwise to purchase a home. But if that weren't the case, if interest rates did go down and the economy is strong, so people feel confident in their jobs and in their income, then yes, that could be an incentive to get back out there in the market. And obviously lower prices will bring buyers out there. Do you know something that we don't, that we're going to suddenly see that?
How about this one? Are you seeing much turnover with realtors? In my market, the agents are suffering overall. What are you hearing from other colleagues?
Well, there are less sales than in previous times. So yes, with less sales, there's less to go around. So more experienced agents are going to get the majority of those sales, and less experienced agents or agents who are not giving it the effort to get the business are going to start falling out of the business.
I will say personally, I am seeing where some of the agents that I talk to, because we do reach out to agents locally, that they have become part-time or they've gotten out completely. Now it's a very small percentage. I mean, we're kind of like at the beginning of like renewing your licenses. So a lot of them are just starting to renew and they're kind of taking a moment to figure out what they want to do. But I will say they're scaled back to be part-time or they have not renewed their licenses. So that's just something I'm seeing from personally on my end. But things are, I believe, going to continue on that path. We'll see what happens, but that's my personal take on that. How about this one, Ron? Do you believe it is harder to find deals now that technology has taken over the real estate industry?
technology only helps. I'm not sure why technology would be a problem. I don't know. How do you interpret?
I mean, maybe it could mean that, and you, Moto, you're welcome to kind of dive into that a little bit more specifically. But I think what it's saying is that, do you believe it's harder to find deals now that technology has taken over? Everything happens so much faster now. I think that, you get the information put out there so much faster. People can react to it so much faster. And so it is harder to find deals. What do you think? I mean, the speed and everything happens so much faster with technology.
And it depends which technology you're using. If you go onto some websites, like some that begin with a Z, you'll find that they do not update their website as frequently as you would hope in this real-time internet society allows us to update things. If you go directly to a real estate agent can set you up with whatever your search criteria is, so that as soon as a house comes on the market, you're notified of that house. In fact, you're notified even for some houses that are coming soon on the market, which you're typically not notified of those by some of these other websites. So if you use the technology, it can actually help you to quickly find the houses as quickly as they come out, you can find them. If you're not using the technology, then I guess you'll be left behind.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And well, here is a comment, talking about that technology is taking over because people will eventually process loans and buy their homes online. No need for agents. I don't think we're at that point yet.
First off, I wouldn't buy a house online without. I would want to see a house first. When we list houses with Sachs Realty, we've got some very good information that's put out on the web. We've got professional photography. We've got virtual tours. You can really see a lot of the house. At the same time, it's not the real thing. And contrary to what some people believe, we actually still live in a real world, not a virtual world. As far as the loans go, there are lots of intricacies to all these loans. And why would you try and figure out all these intricacies by going online when you can go to a lender who already knows these things? Why would you try and navigate through all the many disclosures that go into a real estate contract when you can go to a real estate agent who already knows what these things are and why they're in there, and can give you the explanations behind all of these things? I've seen people who have tried to do things on their own, and typically they've either overpaid for a house, lost money in the some guy I know he lost a $10,000 deposit because he didn't put the proper disclosures into his contract. I don't see real estate agents going away. I don't see loan officers going away. The role they play is too important to help people understand what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm. We are approaching the 9 o'clock hour, but we are going to take a couple more questions. We got another one from Travis. As a buyer, why is having a great agent important?
Oh, who said that?
That's Travis, Real Estate Mindset. He has an awesome page, you guys. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. He's fantastic, super knowledgeable, and very on top of current news.
Right. Well, a great agent is going to be able to recommend great lenders, for one. A great agent is going to be able to walk through every part of the process in the purchase of a home, from valuing the property, evaluating the structure, even though somebody else will eventually do these, such as an appraiser or an inspector or a lender will be involved. if you don't have an agent who understands how all these things work, then sometimes your client is just lost out there. I frequently see clients come back to me and say, how does this work? What are they talking about? What's the appraiser saying? What's the lender saying? And if there's somebody who can put it into perspective or tell them up front, when you go to the lender, this is basically what they're going to ask for. They go to the lender and that's what they ask for. They say, okay, that's great. I was prepared for everything that they asked. So thanks for telling me how that was going to work.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that agent who has a good understanding of how it all works, you're going to be lost.
Yeah. Ron, why don't you tell everyone your contact information in case you want to reach out to Ron, you have some more questions. Ron, how do they get in touch with you if they want to continue the conversation?
Well, of course, you can contact the Sachs office or you can contact me directly. My direct line is 410-935-5844. Be glad to talk to you. We can further discuss things we've discussed today, or if you are in the market looking to buy or sell, give me a call.
We're going to take a couple more questions and then we are going to wrap it up for 2022. But let's see. We've got this one from Naitikra. I have wondered, would making it the norm to have sellers provide inspection be a good thing? In effect, you know the status before you drag your agent halfway across Texas.
Having a home inspection could be a good thing in that you know some things that maybe you should fix in the house to prepare it for the market. I've had some houses inspected by the same inspector who have found completely different things. So you want to make sure that you have a good inspector. And it also helps if you have an agent who says, here's some things, some codes have been updated. Here's some things that maybe you didn't have to have when you bought the house, but this is what people are expecting now. Or here's some things that they're looking for with these types of loans. And they might be the type of loan that would be most likely to be used on your property. You might want to consider upgrading or putting these things in there, or at least you would know.
But do you think it would be?
They need to be, but the home inspection ahead of time.
Yeah.
Typically, I don't advise that people get it.
Okay. What do you think about that possibly being something that's criteria for when you list a home, that everyone get a home inspection? What are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
There are still going to be some people who say, I still want to get my own home inspection.
Right.
Because there's such a variance in home inspections. And you want somebody who's working for your interest, who you hire, who you know is working for you.
Yes.
Versus, I don't know who that guy is that the seller got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe there's a way to say, okay, it's an unbiased report. And here it is. But I think you're still going to get a lot of buyers who feel more comfortable by getting their own inspection.
Yeah.
And that's what I've seen anyway, is when somebody does say it's already inspected, usually the buyer wants to get their own inspection anyway.
Mm-hmm. We're going to answer one more. And thank you all again for tuning in tonight on this holiday week, that weird week between Christmas and New Year's, but it's wonderful to have you here with us tonight. With new construction being built with high cost materials from supply chain issues, how much can the builders really come down? It would seem there isn't much profit baked in.
I think there's a limit. But rough rule of thumb that some builders have given me is, and you might think, why am I paying so much? That they like to build in about a 30% profit. So there might be plenty of room to come down in spite of prices going up. Now, that's just from some builders with whom I've spoken. Some others maybe are cutting it a lot closer than that. I guess the more that they build, the less of a profit margin they can take, because they make the profit on quantity instead of one having a larger margin per house.
Mhm. Well, Ron, this has been a pleasure.
Oh, it's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure talking to everybody. Sorry Todd wasn't here for you, but
Yeah,
he
we missed
deserves a
Todd.
vacation like the rest of us.
We missed him, but he'll be back next Tuesday in 1 week, and we'll be in 2023. Hard to believe, but thank you all. Thank you, Ron, again. And yes, if you would like to subscribe and click the bell, and we would be happy to bring you more content just like this. And don't forget to follow us on our social media channels. And until then, we will see you next time. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year.